On. Welcome to Democracy 2019. As you can see, we have Lauren McLean, Boise City Council President, in with us to answer some questions and just have a conversation about this runoff that is scheduled for December 3rd. And make sure, before you even forget, get out and vote. Your voice, your vote. That's why we have her right back here. Well, welcome into the studios.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Talk about some of the issues, talk about the differences between you and your opponent in this runoff, and talk about some of the challenges facing the City Council, and if you become the next mayor, some of the challenges that will face you on a personal level.
Yeah, happy to be here.
All right, well, let's start off.
Thanks so much.
Let's go back to election night.
Sure.
Were you surprised by the numbers? I mean, it was 46-30, obviously a large number between you and Mayor Beater, but were you surprised by the numbers, and what do you think the voters were trying to tell all the candidates that night?
Sure, I mean, I think that the voters were making it clear that they recognize that our city's at a crossroads, that we have a lot of new challenges because of how far we've come, and they believe that we need a fresh sense of urgency and new perspective and new ideas to address them.
The library vote and the stadium complex vote, that's been sidelined now. That's been pretty much decided for now. People are not going for the runoff election for that. So it is going to be candidate versus candidate. Do you think that will affect how many people come out? I hope it doesn't, but do you feel that it will?
Well, a couple of things on that, actually. We had record turnout on Election Day in November, which was so exciting. Yeah. And I think that's because people are so interested in what's happening next for our community, and I have knocked on thousands of doors, and those votes for the library and stadium vote weren't a surprise because it's been so clear that the public wanted to be included in conversations, and they want their leaders to hear them and listen to them and reflect on the thoughts that they have about our future. And I think that's what we saw Tuesday night, election night. The voters were clear about that, and in the runoff, it's still the same election.
Yes.
I've been having the same conversations with voters across the city since May, and I believe that people will return to the polls and reiterate what they were saying several weeks ago, and that is that they want leadership that listens, that brings new ideas to address our new challenges.
I think, is
and
a word
transparency,
you like to use.
yeah, that's really important.
Right, to tell people and to bring them in. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of things at the mayoral forum.
Sure.
That occurred not too long ago. That Mayor Beater was talking to the voters, and he said, "Now you're engaged, we will re-engage you, and we will get it right," are his words. Is that good enough, and why, in your view, didn't the mayor engage before?
I don't know why the mayor didn't engage before. What I do know is that I've been engaging all along and have had the same conversations before the November election that I've continued to have since then, because voters are engaged. Our residents care deeply about this community, want to be involved in the decisions being made, and want to be partners in coming up with solutions for the challenges that we have right now.
He wants to debate more, or he wants to sit down and have forums, whatever you want to call them, forums or debates before the runoff. He says that you're not, you don't want to engage the voters before the runoff. Is that fair?
We have had 8 debates before the election and one since then, 9 debates, one of which the mayor didn't attend. That's a lot of conversations with many similar questions, but most importantly is that we need to recognize that the voters, our residents, understood what they were doing on election night. They made clear that they want new leadership and that they expect us to listen and to have true conversation about the issues at hand. And so I've had approaching, I think, 35 listening sessions around this city where for an hour and a half I will stand with no rules and be directly accountable to the public and have a conversation about my vision for the city and the things that our residents want us to be thinking about. That, I think, especially as people are already voting, have been able to watch 8 forums online or in person, is the most important piece, is the true conversations with voters rather than the theatrics that you often saw
Sure.
at City Club in the debate.
A little contentious, and you'd probably admit it got to be a little of that day. But let me ask you that I think a lot of people, I know you have addressed this before, but people are curious that Mayor Beater appointed you to Vern Fields' old seat in 2011, I believe it was.
Yes.
Mayor Beater says that the two of you had a conversation shortly thereafter where you told him that you would not run against him as long as he was mayor. Is that true? And if it is, what has changed?
That is so interesting. We've had many conversations over the years about, I didn't really see myself jumping into this race or jumping in to challenge him. But I came to realize this spring, especially when hearing from so many folks that we needed to have a conversation about where the future lies for our community, about new solutions, because the policies of the last 16 years aren't cutting it for our community now. And we had a similar question at City Club, and when it comes down to it, I need to think first and foremost about our city and our residents rather than a conversation from 8 years ago with one individual. That this is about Boise, not about a person.
So times change, fair enough.
Yeah.
Right. So
and needs changed, and cities change, and leaders need to evolve with it.
What are the big differences between you and the mayor? Some would say steady as she goes. Some people would say, well, it's time for a change. What changes specifically would you like to see if you were the mayor?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we need to address trafficking congestion and public transportation in this region. And after 16 years of the same attempts, we're 20 years behind. So I want to bring new urgency and ideas and a willingness to build relationships regionally to create the will to make public transportation a reality, because we've got to ask ourselves, are you spending more time or less time in your car than you were 16 years ago or even 8 years ago? So that's a big piece that we haven't seen impacted that we must. Affordable housing, we've done great things. We need to do more and better and faster because there's a true affordability crisis right now in our community. On F-35s, I oppose lobbying for those planes because of the impact that a report makes clear will have on current residents' homes. We can't turn our backs on our existing residents and on schools, but instead believe that we can support the servicemen and women at Gowan by supporting other parts of their mission in the long run.
I think you kind of answered my next question about if you were to become the next mayor of Boise, what two issues would you tackle the two top issues that you would tackle once you went into office? And it sounds like the affordable housing issue and the traffic issue. Let's go and let's talk about that for a second. Mass transit. I mean, I know the mayor's always talked about, using that rail line. We've heard that way
forever.
When going back to one of the candidates, former Mayor Brent Coles, was back in the 90s. We had talked about using that rail line to bring people in. Is it a matter of just getting the lights to turn at the same time, or do we need some kind of mass transit, whether it be on that rail line or a cable car system of some kind?
Or because it's taken so long to make any progress, there's new technology that doesn't require tracks. So we could have a 21st century transportation system in this region without having to lay track downtown, State Street, even out to Caldwell. What is most important is to recognize that yes, we need a funding tool, but for 16 years we've tried the same approach at getting the funding tool and saying we can't do this if we don't get this funding tool from the legislature. And instead I'm proposing that we have to create a regional sense of, out of collaboration, a regional vision that will connect Caldwell to Boise, Middleton to Boise on State Street, the city investing more in our buses so they run more often, and also, of course, for those of us that do commute by bike or can walk to work, safe pathways for people. Because every person we get off the road is one less car that those that have to drive are having to negotiate. And we're going to be a valley of 1 million people by 2040. We're 20 years behind on the transportation system. We can't wait another 4 to make progress.
Working with ACHD.
Yes.
Your relationship with them.
So people often say to me, what do you think about ACHD? And I say, well, they exist, therefore I must work with them.
Right.
People have voted us into office, and they've also voted ACHD commissioners into office, and it's on us to walk away from the past baggage and grudges and politics and recognize that we're expected to work together.
Because you feel they're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. And they're partners with us in the solutions. So I really believe that a blank slate and new relationships there matter. And that's how we get the business of the people in this valley and our city taken care of.
The homeless issue in the courts now, how do you see that playing out? How would you like it to be played out here in the city?
Sure, a couple things on that, of course. So we're waiting for the Supreme Court to determine whether or not they'll hear the case. And if they hear it, they'll make a decision sometime in 2020. That is moving forward. It's already moved forward. I believe that we can prevent camps, protect our neighborhoods, and also protect those experiencing homelessness without ticketing them and criminalizing homelessness. And that's what I've talked about, that I don't support camps. And there are people that are saying otherwise, and it's just not true. Nobody supports camps. They're not safe. But we can prevent them by remaining vigilant, preventing additional homelessness. Right now we're seeing evictions rise because of the affordability crisis. The city needs to do more to prevent evictions address affordability so people can stay in their homes to prevent homelessness. And then we can build on the incredible partnerships that we've established since Cooper Court, where we connect those experiencing homelessness with the services that they need to move into a shelter and on into a home and hopefully work. And if they have a ticket or they've been in the criminal justice system because we ticketed them for sleeping, it becomes harder to find a job, to find a home. And then of course we need to continue to provide permanent supportive housing for those experiencing homelessness to help them stay in a home when they exist.
How important is it for you, as the mayor of Boise, if you're elected, to work with the neighborhood associations? We heard so much during the candidates for the city council. We held a forum, and that that came up all the time about these neighborhoods mean so much to this city.
Yeah.
And to keep them involved.
So having had the experience of serving on city council and having to make tough decisions every week on development applications, I truly value neighborhood associations, the leadership opportunities they provide to our residents, and that voice that they provide to our residents when it comes to charting our future. And just as I value neighborhood associations, I deeply value all civic engagement. Have spent much of my career working and to help connect people with the tools that they need to impact the issues they care most about in their communities. And so as mayor, I will commit to continuing to work with neighborhood associations, of course. I have said I will publish my office schedule so people understand who I'm meeting with and why, and then want to be much more accessible. So we'll continue monthly listening sessions and also have an open office policy so that if I'm in the office and don't have a meeting going on, somebody drops in for a conversation, I'm going to have that conversation. Because connecting with our residents day by day, wherever possible, is so important, just as working closely with neighborhood associations is.
I know you're heavily involved in the Foothills issue years ago.
Yeah.
And we're running out of space, and it seems that it's not a matter of growing out, but now it's a matter of growing up.
I will often say, as our city grows up, we're going to grow up. We're going to go closer together and grow up in the appropriate places. Like, that's not for everywhere, but it is important. And so as we continue to grow, we need to protect our open spaces as rapidly as we're growing. I'd like to seek partnerships to be able to work with the county to preserve our farmlands, and then imagine connecting our farmlands to our foothills with pathways for people that go through neighborhoods and along the river, by schools and jobs, and then we're anchored by open spaces. And as we grow closer together and up, we're also going to have to reimagine what those gathering places look like. I think it's an incredibly exciting time for our community, and we have great opportunities out of these challenges ahead if we're willing to be creative and have tough conversations, roll up our sleeves, and work together to chart the future of this place.
This city council will have a new look.
Yes, it will.
How do you feel about that?
I am so excited to work with the new members and of course the existing members as well. If nothing else, this election showed us that there is such interest in what's happening in our community and so many next generation leaders stepping up to run. And so the council will look different. There'll be new energy to address these challenges. And I just think a sense of excitement in City Hall, the potential as new generation leaders come in, both within the city and then regionally working together.
Would you like it to be seamless? I know we've talked about the differences between you and your opponent, but do you want to make a big splash your first 100 days in office, or would you like it to be kind of calm and seamless?
Well, I'd say that the great thing about me as a potential candidate is my experience allows me to understand how City Hall works. It has allowed me to see what hasn't worked. It's connected me with the community, people throughout this community, and I can step in on day one with the experience necessary to have it be smooth and look forward to working with the mayor on that transition. But also I know that the public wants to see different, so communications will be really important. Transparency will be important, and I'll get right to work with an affordable housing task force and building those relationships regionally to start moving on transportation.
A lot of people don't know what you did before you got on city council. Tell a little.
So actually, and while I've been on city council, because city council is just a part-time job, so some of us actually do have to continue working. So I'm a working mom, and since my early days in the Foothills campaign, I did that, and then have led different advocacy efforts for quite a while. And 10 years ago, I started my own business. I left an investment firm that I was at, and then started working with philanthropists to help in the same way that I had helped some of my clients invest according to their values, I moved into philanthropy to help them give away their money according to their values. And so work with individuals and foundations, and also help develop almost like a giving circle called the Idaho Investor Network here in Boise. It's a group of like-minded individuals who want to impact the policy and the future of our state.
Let's kind of wrap things up the way we started. So it is a runoff. It is you and Mayor Beater. What is the one difference between you and your opponent when people go to the polls? And I think there will be a lot of people that already have made up their minds, obviously, but I think there's going to be a sector of folks that are going to go and maybe rethink it. Maybe somebody voted, I don't know, maybe they go back and forth, but what is that one difference you want the voters of Boise to know?
That I believe it would be an incredible honor to earn their vote again on December 3rd, and I recognize that as a city we've come far but have new challenges, and I offer that new perspective and a sense of urgency that is so important, and have committed also to the public that I'll, create a personal term limit. So if I have the honor to earn oops, I hit my microphone.
Okay.
If I have the honor to earn everyone's vote on December 3rd, I will not be mayor for life. I'll look at this as a three-term opportunity if I'm so lucky to have one.
Right. And I asked the mayor that. That's funny you brought that up.
Oh, really?
About, if it's not broke, why fix it? And we talked about the term limit. So you are for, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, cities evolve and leaders need to evolve with those cities. And what we're seeing right now is we've come far, but there are a lot of urgent challenges that I believe if you know you have a limited amount of time to make an impact in the community you love, you're going to do everything you can every day to make that possible and create and maintain the relationships you need to make that possible, because you know your time is short and you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders in that short time.
I know you're not naive, but have you learned anything in the last 2 or 3 weeks about running for mayor?
I've learned so much in the course of all of this, and I've learned especially in the last 2-3 weeks that maintaining a conversation about issues and values and a vision for a city is so important, and getting kind of dark and negative in a campaign that stayed positive isn't what the voters wanted or expected or what they deserve. And so, of anything, my favorite part of this has been talking one-on-one with individuals and in forums about our future, rather than kind of the knockdown, drag-out, gotcha politics that we've seen the last couple weeks.
Well, and we saw that come up at the forum. Not to rewind here, but the legacy statement, legacy projects.
Yeah.
Are legacy projects a bad thing?
Everyone leaves a legacy. And so what is written about your legacy is important. Your children, as the mayor said, are a legacy, of course, but in common parlance, we all think about it in other ways too. And I believe that what you leave behind, whether that be buildings or a narrative about the impact you had or how you moved on when you've stopped serving, is all important.
Well, I hope it's a legacy for future mayors and city council. One issue is the foothills, that we will always have the beautiful Boise foothills to look at in decades to come, I think.
And that is because of the hard work of so many people.
Years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, and I thank you so much for coming in, and we'll see what happens on election night coming up.
I really appreciate it.
In December. And
Thank
remember, your voice, your vote.
Your voice, your vote.